So you can't prevent every trigger and you can't predict every trigger. And you definitely can't expect triggers to have zero impact on you. DBT says that is not the goal. The goal is not to stop all triggers. The goal is to stop triggers from running and ruining your life. Triggers are not a sign of personal failure because you will never outsmart all of the triggers. DBT gives you the skills that you will need to reduce the power of the triggers so you can move through your life with a little swagger. Triggers are not the enemy. A trigger is not a sign that you are broken. A trigger is not proof that you are back at square one or that treatment never worked. A trigger is literally just your nervous system doing its job, just sometimes too aggressively. So DBT looks at a trigger as data. This data tells you where potential vulnerabilities are. Not necessarily, we don't want you to think that you can control everything, but it may be a vulnerability that you have. It may be that you lack a skill or you could improve on a skill. So a trigger is data. Use it. The goal is not to eliminate all triggers. The goal is to respond skillfully when they do show up because they will. And that is the shift. That is the swagger. This is how you can be in charge of your story. Why can't you prevent every trigger? Because life is too unpredictable. People are too unpredictable. You are too unpredictable. Your internal world is unpredictable. And DBT is brutally honest about that. You cannot eliminate triggers and you cannot eliminate their emotional impact. Even if you were to bubble wrap your life, stay inside your house, never leave, you are still there, your brain is still there. And your brain will produce memories, thoughts, emotions, and interpretations. So the goal isn't to control triggers. The goal is capability and capacity, and to strengthen both. Your capability enters the story when you can reduce the strength of and the length of the trigger. So where DBT shines is that you can't stop the spark, you can't stop the trigger, but you can prevent a wildfire. DBT teaches you to reduce the intensity of the emotional hit and the length of the emotional hit, and it stops that domino effect before it controls you. And this is the difference between I was triggered and I spiraled for 48 hours, and that's just how my life is because I had a life of trauma versus I was triggered, I took a breath, I used a skill, and I kept moving. That is not luck. That did not happen to you. That is not a feeling that showed up. That is training. That is you using your skills. That is you being in control if you want it. So the swagger move is to respond on purpose. Don't react. Swagger isn't about attitude, it is a regulated nervous system through the use of intentional behavior, intentional choices. When a trigger hits, DBT teaches you to pause, breathe, check the facts if you want, and choose your next move. And when I say check the facts if you want, if you know full well that it's a trigger and there's no actual threat, you don't need to check the facts. You can pause, breathe, and then choose your next move. You don't have to be calm. I can't think I would be calm if uh, if I experienced a trigger from a trauma. I wouldn't be calm. But you can be in control of your response, even when you're not in control of what started the situation. And that is the flex. Here's the promise of DBT. It doesn't promise you a trigger-free life or a perfectly calm nervous system or a world that will never poke your old wounds. DBT doesn't promise that, and no therapy should. DBT promises something better, a life where triggers don't dictate your behavior. A life where you can feel the spark without letting it burn your whole day down. A life where you can say, yeah, that got me, and I handled it. That's the flex. That is the swagger. So you don't need to eliminate triggers. You need to build the skills that make them less powerful. Because you can't prevent every trigger, you can absolutely prevent every trigger from owning you. If you want more DBT with Swagger breakdowns, hit subscribe, drop a comment, and tell me what you want to hear.